before we get started with today's speaker. Coach Tressel is the longest tenured speaker here for the Pro Football Hall of Fame Luncheon Club. And as a result of that, we're going to give him another piece of clothing to add to his collection. And to do that, I'm going to have our current treasurer, Jim, step up and do that for us.
And it's Tim.
Tim. There's too many Jims up here.
And if you stand by us too. Okay. As he said, Mr. Tressel has been here 31 years.
More than that.
And, well, he says more than that.
36, I believe. 36. Yeah.
Okay, he said 36. I believe him.
RJ confirmed.
Wow, look at that.
Duck Club.
I'm gonna have to get on the weights to fill in this.
It'll cover that Youngstown if he puts it on. It'll be Ohio State colors.
Thank you. Okay, now we can get on with the business. Welcome. You may stand. Today, Monday, 23rd of snowy January out there. And again, we're pleased and much pleasure for our speaker today, Jim Tressel. On behalf of the Pro Football Hall of Fame and the Board of Directors of the Pro Football Hall of Fame Luncheon Club, I hereby call to order the 19th meeting of the 60th year of the Pro Football Hall of Fame Luncheon Club. Our invocation, followed by our Pledge of Allegiance, will be given today by Minister Rod Stockdale of the North Canton Church of Christ. Rod?
Would you bow with me? Our Father in heaven, we thank you for giving us another day of life. We thank you for being such a great and awesome God that continues to bless us so richly here in this country. I ask that you bless each and every one that's here today, along with our community, our state, our country. We ask that you just help us to continue to be a light to the world. Father, we just thank you for the continued blessings you rain down upon us and help us to be able to touch our communities with good things. We ask that each one here be a light to our community. Father, we ask that you continue to bless us, be with us, and keep us safe. And through the name of your Son that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You got it, bro?
Our introduction of our special guests today, to my right, your left, our club secretary, Jim Lindensmith. Next to Jim, of course, who we just heard from, Pastor Rod Stockdale. And down here in front of me, streaming this whole thing week after week, our esteemed TJ Downing and Stark Media. And his dad is attending today. Walt, where are you? By at the bar. Okay. Thanks for coming today. To my left, your right, of course, our speaker, Coach Tressel. And our very own introduction person extraordinaire, Mike Galena. All right. I normally don't have a joke for you, but this one I heard, and it's a short one, so I'm gonna try one today. Please help me out with this, because I can't understand why some men go to bars to meet women. Instead, they should be going to Hobby Lobby. You see, in a Hobby Lobby store, typically there's a female to male ratio of about 10-1, and they're already there looking for things that they don't need. That went over pretty well. All right. Recognition of our corporate club sponsorships up on the video boards to either side of us, besides a nice pic of Coach Tressel, is our sponsors, AultCare's Primetime Health, Dr. Peter Ferguson, Wilkshire Golf Course, and of course, Liberty Ford. We appreciate their support. Our announcements today, please turn off all cell phone devices. Eliminate anything that is emitting beeps, sounds, flashes of light, whatever, okay? If you need duct tape for the person next to you, we've got a few rolls in the back there. All right, today is also the last day to be able to purchase tickets to our luncheon for next week. They are all pre-sale, keep in mind, and those go on in the back. So next week, we are meeting at the Pro Football Hall of Fame Nash Center. Our speaker next week will be Pro Football Hall of Famer Anthony Munoz. So if you want a ticket to that yet, go to the back. After today's meeting, you have your choice of, help me out, Dennis. Sausage and peppers, or a nice piece of scrod, okay? So get on back there. Okay, we have no deaths, thank goodness, and no illnesses that I've been made aware of. However, we do have a longtime member that celebrated over the weekend on Saturday the 21st, his 81st birthday. Please give a hand to Sam Dudich. Also in my announcements, I was made aware, since you guys are such football nuts, we will announce this early in case you didn't read it in the paper. On August the 18th, you might want to circle that date. I know it's a few months away yet, but the Massillon Tigers will be showcasing in their, not only their stadium, named after, of course, Paul Brown, but they are taking on the most winning high school team in the nation. I think I've got that right. They're either first or second because Massillon stands third. They're our first. Okay, TJ, help me out with that.
Massillon's fourth.
Oh, Massillon's fourth. Excuse me. All right. I appreciate that. So Massillon's number 4. We're going against the Valdosta, Georgia team that is going to be coming up here, and it's going to be a 4-game schedule that day at Tiger Stadium, and it will be teams, other teams, the opponents will be announced yet, but other than Massillon and Valdosta is going to be St. Edwards, Akron Hoban, and Cleveland Glenville. So they should that should be a real neat game of high school football that all of you would want to take in. Okay. Today, our 50-50, Coach Tressel's going to pull a winner out. There are 2 different tickets at the front. Okay, so I got to make that announcement. 2 different rolls of tickets. So the winning number will either start with 795 and then 3 more digits, or 348. Okay, and don't tear up your tickets if you miss the 50-50, because we are also going to be drawing then, if you don't win the 50-50 today, which is worth $240, you have a signed copy, not only by Rex Kern, but also Coach Tressel, to the road to the Horseshoe and beyond, the Rex Kern book that we've got several copies of, but we're giving away 1 today to the second drawing out of the bid. Here we go. Deep, shallow, whatever you want to do. Check me out. 2. Yeah. First one's going to be for the money. Second one will be for the signed book. Is this one money? Money. Okay. That one's the money. It's 348. Thank you. Wonderful. And the other one is $795. So we're good. Okay, for the $240, and Ozzy, where are you? Way in the back there. He's going to be bringing you the cold hard cash. 348 233. 233, right up here. Ozzy, you got to make a long trip today. We got a front row man. Okay. And now for the book. The other winning ticket today is 795 539. 539. Who wins the book? Right there. You want to pass this back to, keep raising your hand. We're going to pass the book back to you. Thanks, Tim. Tim's bringing the book back to you. Okay. Perfect. Let's see here. Next week, I already mentioned our Pro Football Hall of Famer Anthony Munoz will be addressing us at the Nash Center. And without any further ado or taking away any more time, I'd like to introduce Mike Galena to introduce our speaker today. Mike.
Thank you, Jim.
You bet.
Hey, as you were sharing that story about Hobby Lobby, I'm just thinking to myself, now I know where all you guys go at 1 o'clock when you just get up and leave. I never know where everybody's going at 1 o'clock. Now I think you've given a place to go. Hobby Lobby, they like their chances out there.
Yeah.
Bless you guys. Well, speaking of blessings, Rod, thank you for taking good care of us today. And we have a blessing today for sure. So when you think about introducing Coach and President Tressel, you think most of you connect to his story somewhere along that line of either or both. Could be his coaching career, certainly his dad's coaching career. You move into presidency and a little time at Akron University as well. So you find your way to connect. So what I want you to do is allow that to happen while I start out with the concept of legacy. Think about the definition of legacy. The value and richness of an individual's life, including accomplishments and the impact he has had on others. Let's go through that again. The value and richness, both are uplifting. And then that includes accomplishments, but beyond accomplishments, the impact. So, Coach, as I thought about how to share best today, given where you are in your career, that to me was the energy of legacy. But I'll connect you very quickly to his journey so you can all find your way to where you would have done that. Then I'll wrap up the introduction. I'm going to take you through quick snapshots. Boom, boom, boom. Playing career, coaching, awards, administration, and family. So we'll work our way through each of those.
A little closer.
Closer? How's that? Hobby Lobby? And now the hearing. I'll lean right into that. So let's do that playing career right out of the gate. Berea High School, graduated in 1971. Played quarterback under his father, Baldwin Wallace. 4 varsity letters, all conference as a senior in 74. So there's the Berea BW connection. Coaching, we can run you through that very quickly. Assistant coach, Akron, Miami of Ohio, Syracuse, and Ohio State. Then moved into head coaching position at Youngstown State University. It's 135, 57, and 2 there. Ohio Valley Conference champion, and then they became independent after that. 4 NCAA Division I AA national championships. Then we know he was called to Ohio State. There, 63-14 in the Big Ten, 9-1 against Michigan. We'll pause there. Walter, we're pausing there for you. 7 Big Ten championships, 1 national championship in 2002. Overall, Ohio State, 106-22 at the highest level. Awards, 8 times Coach of the Year. In 2015, he was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. Now we move to administration. University of Akron as Vice President of Strategic Engagement in 2012. And that's where I first got up to Coach, who came to North Canton Hoover High School to spend some time with our guidance department on how to create a pathway to the University of Akron. Did a beautiful job facilitating the group. So you would think to yourself, can a coach work in higher education? 100% the answer is yes, when you have the skills of Jim Tressel. It's amazing. Then in May of 2014, he was named the 9th president of Youngstown State University until his retirement here on February 1, 2023. Now let's take a quick look at family as I bring it home. Born in 1952 to Lee and Eloise Tressel. stops along the way, Massillon, Ohio. I'm sure he'll touch on that. Mentor, and then of course, Berea. Extremely generous in the, I'm sorry, I want to go right back up here. After that, he and his wife, Ellen, connected on the idea of how to best help others as this administration piece connected. And so extremely connected to the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, Athletes in Action, and get this, at Youngstown State University, along with the Watson family, donated $1 million to build an indoor athletic facility named the Watson and Tressel Training Site on the campus of YSU. Additionally, the same family duo donated to the construction of the Andrews Student Recreation and Wellness Center on the campus of YSU. At Ohio State, renovations to the William Oxley Thompson Memorial Library. The Winner's Manual royalties, if you've ever read that book, helped to contribute to that contribution line. And then the James Cancer Center, Tressel Family Fund for Cancer Prevention Research, as both of his parents passed from cancer. They have 4 children, Zach, Carly, Whitney, and Eric. And we come back to legacy as a player, as a coach, as an administrator, and as a family man. And when you think about that, the value and richness of an individual's life, including accomplishments and the impact on others he has been just profound. So he joined me in welcoming a legacy to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Mr. Jim Tressel.
Pastor Stockdale, President Sterrett. We got another Jim. Is there a couple Jims along? Jim, yeah, we got all kind. And Mike took my whole speech. I got nothing else to tell you. That's all we've done. Yeah, right. Any questions? But you know, it's funny, as Mike mentioned, February 1st, I'll be stepping aside as the president of Youngstown State. And so in this last 6 months or so, of course, everyone wants to go through your history and all this and that. And honestly, I don't remember much about Mentor, Ohio. My dad was the coach there. I was born there. We left there when I was 3 to come to Massillon. I really don't remember much about Mentor other than when he left, he had 34 straight wins going, which was a good thing for a coach. I began being able to recall things from our time here in Massillon, and the biggest memory I have is Maury and Katie Basler. Some of you remember Maury and Katie, the great Tiger fans, and Katie played the Calliope, and we went to their basement, which had every team picture, and Augie Morningstar lived right down the road, and so I began some of my memories there. And my oldest brother Dick is 5 years older than I am, and I remember I think he went to Whittier School, and he got into a little trouble. I don't know if the judge is still alive, but he accidentally burned down a caboose, and he had to go to juvenile court. So that was my first remembrance of the law. It was here, and he ended up getting grounded. And I can imagine. Can you imagine if you're the Massillon coach and your child is in court for burning down a caboose? It wasn't a great start, but he did well there. And then when I saw Bill Rich here earlier, it really jogged my memory of. It was crystal clear to me how important recruiting was. When we left here, I was about 5, almost 6, and we were going to Baldwin Wallace. The beginning of all of his recruiting at Baldwin Wallace was Stark County. I mean, Bill Ridge from North Canton, who became a great player, and I've told you the story about how he had the punt return to win the Kent game back in '61, and Tom Gooseby, you remember, from Alliance, who went on and played 10 years in the NFL, and Obie Bender was in that early group from Canton McKinley, who unbelievable linebacker, and became the vice president of Baldwin Wallace, and you could go on and on. Jerry Mitchell was a great defensive back from Massillon, and I think there was a John Halter. Any Massillon people? You remember John Halter?
No, sorry.
I think there was a lineman but anyway, Larry Shin. Anyone from Alliance here? Larry Shin was in that first recruiting class, and he later on became the president of Berea College and had a storied career in academia. But our recruiting, the beginning of the great journey that my dad had at Baldwin Wallace began right here. So it's been a lot of fun coming back here for, I think it's 35 or 36 years. Who is it, Tim, that can't count past 31? But I think he's a McKinley grad? Well, that explains it. I understand. But the coolest thing, I do remember once since 1986 that I wasn't here because my uncle passed away, and I ended up sending a replacement because I had signed up for a date. But I'm not sure I've missed since 86, but we could go back in the records. But the best part I'm reminded of when I come here is, good people coming together just to have some time together and talk about stuff, and sports is big and community is big and all the rest. But the day begins with the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. And that's what sets it apart from a lot of the places that you go throughout your career and so forth. So it truly has been a joy. I know when I was the head coach at Youngstown State, I would come each year and give you a status report as to how we did. And if we had a good year, it was a lot easier. If we had a bad year, had to make up stuff. And then the same thing was true at Ohio State. We gave you a little update, and after a good year, it was a lot more fun. And then we're at Akron. We gave you a little update, and since we've been at Youngstown State, talking a little bit our progress, and it's been a joy to get out and spread the good news of the places that you believe in and the young people that you're a part of. And so I can't remember which month it was. I was here last year. It wasn't this early. It was like April and so forth. So I thought to myself, well, my update, I hope it doesn't overlap. I hope I don't tell. And then I thought, nah, those guys won't remember. So I'm not that worried about this. If I repeat something, you'll think it was the first time you heard it. But anyway, our spring last year at Youngstown State, our track program, and I think I've shared with you, our track program is incredible. Our track coach, Brian Gorby, has got, I think, 52 conference championship rings. And we're in the Horizon League for our Olympic sports, and between men's and women's cross country, indoor track, and outdoor track, since we hired him in the mid-90s, he's got like 51 or 52 championship rings. We had 13 of our track athletes last June that went on to the NCAAs, which to Eugene, Oregon. I mean, it just legitimate, really great track program. And our women's lacrosse, which we just started 2 years ago, and we're in the Mid-American Conference for that particular sport, just in 2 years, our lacrosse program won the Mid-American regular season. We got beaten in the conference tournament, so we didn't get to go to the NCAAs, but we thought that was a heck of a thing. And women's lacrosse is a really growing sport. And Bill Rich, and we were talking earlier, and maybe we'll get to it with the questions, because I know you'll have one question about what about this NIL and portal. So we'll save the thing there. But it's a lot more difficult right now trying to build programs. And so we were awfully proud of our team to be able to become Mid-American regular season champions in just 2 years. And then when we came into the fall, we're in the top FCS football conference in America, as evidenced by the fact that North Dakota State and South Dakota State played for the national championship, and they're both from our league. In fact, we've won, I think, 12 of the last 13 national championships in the Missouri Valley Football Conference. And I was really pleased for Coach Doug Phillips. And we ought to get Doug on the docket one of these days, because I think he's done a heck of a job. Doug was a very successful high school coach at Springfield High School over in the Youngstown area, then Salem High School. Then he went into administration a little bit. In fact, I believe he was at Dalton for a bit, right? And then got into the college coaching business, and he was with us at Ohio State, and he was at Bowling Green and Iowa State, and most recently with Luke Fickle at Cincinnati. And then became our head coach. And this year we were 7-4. Normally in the Missouri Valley Football Conference, 5 teams are taken into the 24-team tournament simply because of the strength of our schedule. Unfortunately, we were 4th this year, and they only took 3, which was very, very different. Some of the teams they took ended up in the opening rounds getting beat by 4 and 5 touchdowns. But anyway, Coach Phillips is doing a heck of a job, and we have a young man named Jaleel McLaughlin, who is the leading rusher in the history of the NCAA. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 8,300 yards or something. But think about that, 8,300 yards. In fact, I think he just overtook the guy from Mount Union.
Kimmick.
Kimmick? Yep. TJ, you got the answer to everything.
Right. I learned from the best.
When you were playing, you couldn't answer anything. You knew I couldn't hold back, right?
I knew it was coming.
You were just wondering when. But as we move into our winter sports season right now, both our men's and women's basketball, our women are tied for first in the Horizon League. Our men are 1 game out of first. I think they're tied for second in the Horizon League. And in fact, just a week ago, I didn't even know there was this statistic. We can fact check it with TJ, but there is a statistic called points per possession in basketball, I guess. And we, last week, were number 1 in the nation in points per possession, and some of the other folks were like Purdue and Gonzaga, and a couple others were like right behind us. So we've got a really good men's and women's basketball program going on right now. Jared Calhoun, who played for who coached for Hugs, and he was one of Hugs' assistants, and he's done a heck of a job for us. And John Barnes is our women's basketball coach, and he's been there 8 or 9 years doing a heck of a job. And so we got a chance. You never know. You at our level, you have to win your tournament. We're going to have to win the Horizon League tournament. No matter how good you are in the regular season, we're only going to get 1 in. But we have a chance this year, and so we're excited about that. But outside of the athletics realm, it's been an interesting last couple of years to see the evolution of what we've been trying to do in terms of the academic side. Just recently, we created a division of workforce education and innovation. And the reason we did it is because as we were out talking to business and industry and talking about the needs of folks, all we ever heard about was workforce. Can't find workers. Can't find workers. We need more skills. And it really began, Jim Sage, in the IT area. And it was like there's 700,000 IT jobs out there, and we just can't get enough people trained up in those. And so we began an IT workforce accelerator, which began this division of workforce education and innovation. And we connected with IBM and created some curriculum, not just for our computer science majors, IT majors, but for any major that wanted to go and get credentialed in whether it's cybersecurity or design thinking or data analytics or whatever, all those things that people just can't find enough of. Well, along as we were building that the last 3 or 4 years, advanced manufacturing has become so critical. 3D printing, robotics, automation, manufacturing as we knew it in the old steel companies in Massillon and Canton and Cleveland and Youngstown and Pittsburgh, it's a different world now. And so we needed to get more training in advanced manufacturing. So we took all of our advanced manufacturing curricula, if you will, created some certificates and credentials and opportunities so that our students, our engineers, could build upon their curriculum. Maybe our general studies person who just wasn't quite sure what they wanted to do, maybe they could get a robotics technology, and there was so much need for that. And then we started getting into the national grant world, and we were awarded a Defense Logistics Agency grant to be the university east of Indianapolis, everything from Indianapolis to the east, that we will go out to small companies to help them learn where advanced manufacturing can benefit them, because they're having trouble getting workers. And so it's been so much fun to see that. We built a 54,000 square foot excellence training center at Coley Hall, and it's been amazing. We've had 2,500, something like that, of industry approved credentials earned out of that by our students and by maybe some people who want to move up their level wherever they're working. We have cohorts coming in from companies to train them on industrial maintenance or robotics or IT or whatever. And it's really been a great addition to our overall curriculum. It's been a great addition to help our region meet its number one problem, and that's workforce. We have got to do a better job with workforce. Well, most recently, a opportunity we had, as you think about just north of Youngstown, Lordstown, Ohio, where there used to be a General Motors plant, right along the Turnpike and Route 80, the Ultium LLC, which was a joint program between LG Chem, a Korean battery maker, and General Motors, came together and built a $2.5 billion plant right there in Lordstown. And they hired our Division of Workforce Education Innovation to do all the training as they're filling up their 2,000 or 3,000 people workforce. But wouldn't you know it, Foxconn, which makes all the Apple iPhone components and so forth, came in and bought the General Motors plant, which used to build the Cruze, and it no longer does that, 6.2 million square foot facility. They came in and bought that, and we're building the Lordstown Endurance electric truck there. We're building the Monarch electric tractor, which is autonomous, and it was created in Napa Valley, where it goes between the rows of the grapes and without a driver, carrying the water, and it has the artificial intelligence to be able to look at the plant and know how much water it needs. I mean, it's crazy. So they're building the Monarch. There's 2 different other small electric cars that they're working on there, the Pear, and I forget what the other one is. But anyway, we've been able to spend a lot of time with Foxconn, and their biggest need as they keep building out that 6.2 million square feet and continue to manufacture things, they're going to need more workforce. And so our job is to help them build their workforce. Our job is to, in our eyes, Cleveland, Akron, Canton to Pittsburgh, to rebuild and repopulate that area. That's the passion that we have right now. Well, just last week, we had the opportunity to go to the Consumer Electronics Show, CES. Some of you have heard of CES, out in Las Vegas. And my VP, Jennifer Odo, said, hey, you need to come out. They want you to serve on a panel on this thing about the electrification of the Northeast Ohio and so forth. And I said, well, you're gonna have to give me some talking points because I'm not quite at that level. And she said, well, yeah, I need you to do this one last thing before you ride into the sunset or whatever. And so I went up to Cleveland Airport, got on a plane on a Friday morning at 7:30 and landed at 9:30 Pacific time. And we went to this CES, Consumer Electronics Show. I don't know if you've ever been to it, but there were 115,000 people. I mean, crazy. In 4 or 5 different buildings in that Las Vegas Convention Center. I think it's 1 of 2 of the biggest conventions that they hold out there. And they had it all set up for us to go and look at all the rising technology. And I'd say half of the technology has to do with the move toward the electric, whatever, whether it's a boat, whether it's a electric. And there was like a George Jetson. You're old enough to remember George Jetson flying around. Well, there was a George Jetson car out there. It's like, but anyway, it was amazing. So we walked around, and one of the hot shots that we were with had one of those Fitbits where they could tell you, how many steps you go. we walked around and looked at all those things, 15,000 steps. I thought, man, I haven't even been on my panel and I'm about wasted here. And so we got up to our panel and they were talking about the impact of all of these things coming to Northeast Ohio and how does the university and all of the K through 12 and all of our universities, Stark State, Cleveland State, Akron, Kent, us, how are we going to come together and work with the workforce and so forth. So I made it through. They gave me the talking points. I tricked them a little bit, you know, and so then the Foxconn people took us out to a Brazilian steakhouse. You ever been to? I've never been to a Brazilian steakhouse.
Just keep cutting them.
They kept cutting the meat and they kept bringing this red stuff in a glass.
Wasn't Kool-Aid?
That wasn't Kool-Aid, no. And so they just kept bringing the meat and so forth. Well, now it's about 11 o'clock Pacific, which means it's 2 o'clock Eastern. And we're heading back to the airport to fly back on the red eye. I won't tell you what airlines, but I was like right cramped up. I couldn't even move my shoulders. The seats were like plastic or something. And and we land back in Cleveland at 6:30 in the morning. I said, man, that's a long day for an old guy that's supposed to be retiring. I thought, you know what, I'm going to go to bed, and I know we have a 2 o'clock basketball game today, but if I don't wake up, I'm just going to have to apologize for not making the game. Well, wouldn't you know it, I woke up at 12:40. And you probably know why I woke up. And so now I had a moral dilemma because I was awake. I knew I had time to get to the game. I thought, you know what, I got to go. I'm awake, and you know. So I got in my car, went to the game. Go to the game. I thought, well, I was gone all day yesterday. I better stop by my office and see, you know, the stuff stacked up on knock out a couple of those things. All of a sudden I got in the office and someone like hit me with a baseball bat. I was just out. So I said, I'm going to go home. I laid down about 6 o'clock and I woke up at like 8 o'clock the next morning.
Got some good stuff.
And so I don't know how I avoided doing the other things that I normally do throughout the course of the night, but I was safe. It was all good. But it is so critical for our region to make sure that we stay competitive with where the world's going. And we have such an advantage. We always say in Youngstown, we are exactly halfway between Pittsburgh and Cleveland. We're exactly halfway from New York and Chicago. A high percent of our country's population is within 8 to 10 hour drive of Northeast Ohio. Our affordability, our culture, you think about all the cultural things that we have in this region. But we've got to stay up competitively with education. Education is so critical. Education is power. Education is the future. And that's why it's been fun. People ask all the time, you know, well, which was more fun, being a head coach or a president? And I said, you know, honestly, both of them were fun. Both of them were very challenging. In some ways, both of them were impossible. You can't win enough. And as a president, you just can't please everyone because limited resources and so many things going on. But both of them were fun. The impossible is kind of fun. I mean, it keeps you fired up and excited and trying to make a difference. But I will tell you this, Ellen and I never thought we'd find something busier than being a head coach at Ohio State. And we did. Being a president of a university, I would have been so much nicer to my presidents if I knew how hard it was to be a president. But that's the way it always works. And it's really been a blessing. And I know for sure that all of my blessings have been because I had unbelievable parents who had unbelievable opportunities, and we got to see their example. And I read once where someone said the only thing that the human being is truly able to learn from is example. And I was so blessed to have the example of wonderful parents. Not everybody has that opportunity. It's something I worry a little bit about today, that not nearly enough have that opportunity to have wonderful examples for the parents. So I know, Mike, we always felt as educators, those of you that coached felt the same way. We had to stand in the gap to make up the difference of maybe some opportunity, some example, some experience that our young people didn't have, and maybe we could help them. And I'll end with this before we get to questions. You know, you're asked all the time near the end of your career, well, what was the greatest team you coached? Or who was the best player? Or what was your greatest win? Or whatever. Well, you know you can't answer that, because just like TJ's streaming this in, 93 countries or wherever it's going, you know, if you say so-and-so was the best whatever, you're going to get 16 texts. Coach, I can't believe that. I was better than him. Or this was the best team. But what are you talking about? We were better than them. So you never get into that. But I have always answered in terms of what was your greatest victory or victories, that the greatest victory is when you see your young people and what they're doing to make a difference down the road. And you see that, none of our journeys were perfect, but then we get to that certain point where we figured it all out and they're making a difference in their communities, and they're good husbands and fathers and professionals as to whatever they're doing, and they're wanting to make a difference in their communities and in this world. And those are the greatest victories. And you all have the same kinds of great victories with the people that you've been able to impact and touch and make a difference with. And so I've been so blessed. And this is my 48th year in higher ed. And I just hit the ripe old age of 70. And I thought, you know what? I've worked 48 years, 7 days a week. I'm going to cut back to 4 or 5 days a week here starting February 1st. And probably be back up to 6 or 7. Ellen will kick me out of the house, But anyway, I'm looking forward to it. But I know you have some good questions. So I'll open it up to questions here, because as Mike always says, whether you're done or not, they're leaving at 1. So I got to get to the question. Yes, sir.
You said at the beginning that you were going to talk about the transfer portal and NIL.
See, you weren't listening close. I said I was going to wait for a question about it, and you did not put that in the form of a question. Okay, all right. Like anything else, it really doesn't matter what you're in favor of. You got to play by the rules of engagement.
Who made the rule?
Wait a minute, you only get one question. Let me finish answering this question. For instance, I remember back when they put in, in the late 80s, maybe early 90s, when they started doing stuff with replay. And I thought, I'm not sure I like them going to this replay. They're going to decide if a guy is 1 inch in bounds, and that can be reviewed, but they can't review that the defensive lineman held TJ from getting off onto the linebacker. They happen to miss that, and they can't review it. That might be more of an impact than that 1 inch out of bounds. So if you're not going to review everything, was my opinion, you shouldn't have replay. Now, didn't matter what I thought. We're having replay. That's just the way it is. And so NIL, transfer portal, that's the rules of engagement now. So when you get the rules of engagement, you've got to decide how you're going to navigate that. I happen to think that the most solid programs who do a great job working with their student athletes will end up navigating that better. Will they like it? No. It's no fun. But the NIL part of things, for 50, 60 years, well, let's not go back that far. 83, TV became deregulated. See, prior to 83, you could be on TV 5 times every 2 years. It was regulated. Well, then it got deregulated. And then all these stations come out. ESPN and CBS has their own sports, and ESPN, all that stuff. So the revenue just started going like that, just started going crazy. Well, we didn't make good decisions back then. As the revenue continued, who profited? The universities and the coaches. And they just let that happen and happen and happen. And no one came up with a fair or right creative plan to deal with the reality that the revenue has gone crazy and that the student athletes were getting less of it. I think back when Walt Downing played, the scholarships were higher than when TJ Downing played. Back in those days, I believe, and maybe Walt, you're not that old, but I think you are, that they used to get a little stipend they called laundry money. It was like $25 a month or something to, quote, do the laundry, because it seemed a little bit fair. Well, then all of a sudden they can't do that. It went down, yet the revenues are going up. And there was never any good leadership or thought put into, we've got to think about how to make this fair. So it exploded with the Alston case and the O'Bannon case, and they went to the Supreme Court. And when you lose in court, I think the Supreme Court voted 9-0. When was the last time they voted 9-0? I mean, but clearly that the student athlete wasn't being treated fairly. They weren't allowed to use their own name, image, or likeness like anyone else was allowed to. It didn't seem right. We had not figured out anything. And I'm not telling you that I had the plan, but we needed to get people in the room from a national standpoint and say, we need to set a fair set of rules. We didn't. We're living with the results of that. Now, it's going to be interesting as we navigate this over time, because like anything else, when it first starts, everyone's all in. People are throwing all kinds of money in here, there. The question might be, how long will it last that it's money being put into the NIL versus maybe building a weight room for the university like many of the philanthropists were doing or whatever? I don't know. It's going to be interesting. There's going to be a sifting out of the haves and have-nots like happens in money situations. In terms of the transfer portal, I've never been a believer in being able to be immediately eligible if you change. And of course, the argument is, well, coaches can change and they're immediately eligible. And it's a good argument. I think like any debate, you can debate both sides of an argument, and neither are all right, neither are all wrong. But I think in those formative years, when you make decisions and you go and then you make a change, that sometimes there's consequences for those decisions in an effort to keep an even playing field and people not stealing players or people not just escaping when they're not happy. I'm not sure what the exact value of fighting through tough times is, but I think it's pretty high. I mean, TJ, we talked about handling adversity almost every day, right?
Yep.
The only way you get good is you learn how to handle adversity. So I'm a little nervous that the portal is not mandating that young people have to fight through adversity, but it's the rules of the game. We're going to have to live with it. They've made the court cases and whatnot that you know they can go and be immediately eligible, and that's that's the score. That's the way it is. So the people that spend a lot of time whining about it aren't going to progress. The people that spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to do it well are going to be, I think, much ahead. And that's why I think the real solid programs. I'm a Ryan Day fan. I just think he's got something about him that he's gonna navigate that. Right, he's never gonna become a guy that runs all over the place and has 19 roster changes. He's gonna recruit well. He's gonna build from within. Sure, he's gonna lose some players, and sure, there's gonna be a player or two come to him. But his is gonna be a program, and I think the people like that. I think that's the challenge people have, and that's gonna end up. The other data that's going to be interesting is now that we've had the portal, although we've always had transfers, and I was kind of okay with the graduate transfer thing. So a student got their degree from the first university they went to, maybe weren't playing quite enough, but they did what we asked, which was get that diploma, going and having a year somewhere else. I was kind of like, yeah, that makes sense. It's not like someone doing it as a freshman or sophomore. But when we see the data of what the success rate of portal people is, it's going to be interesting to see how many of them it ended up being a good idea. We hear the ones on TV, oh, so-and-so transferred from Oklahoma, but what's the masses? And again, we'll need 2 or 3 or 4 more years of data to find that out. So anyway, I answered all 4 of your questions. So we'll go to the next one.
There's one over there.
Yep.
I have a question about one of your players from the championship team, Chris Gamble.
Oh,
It seems like he was never off the field, offensive, defense. Was he ever mentioned for a Heisman Trophy?
I'm not sure if he was in the Heisman discussion. Arguably, he was as impactful as any player we ever had. There was a stretch where he was averaging 128 plays a game. I mean, just crazy. TJ was there with Chris. Chris didn't say a word. In fact, Chris was amazing. Came to us from Dillard High School in Fort Lauderdale. His first year was my first year. Bill Conley had been recruiting him, and we kept recruiting him. And he didn't say much, whatever. Sophomore year comes around. Now it's 2002. And all the guys, TJ and all those guys, Carpenter and Hawk and Troy Smith and Robbie Sims and DeAndrea, and we had a great Santonio, Roy Hall. All of them moved out of the dorm after their freshman year into apartments. Chris Gamble's mother wouldn't let him. He was the only sophomore still in the dorm. Well, then 2002 comes along. He's starting at wide receiver. We get some injuries at corner. We made a little deal going into about the second or third game with Coach D'Antonio, and we said, you can have Chris Gamble down in the red zone, because just teach him man coverage. No one's going to get open. And so you can have him in the red zone when people are knocking at the door. So we did that, and he did well. And well, as time went on, we were having a pretty good season, and we were getting ready to go play Wisconsin. Coach D'Antonio came into my office. He said, hey, Chris is really doing well. Could we have Chris more than just the red zone? And like any good negotiator, I said, okay, if Wisconsin crosses the 50, you can have him. So they crossed the 50 and he made an interception. Well, now we're getting ready to play Penn State. And I think, I don't know, we're 8 or 9-0 and they're maybe the same, or maybe they had a loss. I can't remember. But Coach D'Antonio came in and said, hey, you think we could have Chris maybe a little earlier than the 50? I said, you could have him all over the field. And from that point on, he played 128, 130 plays a game. Incredible. First in 2003, he played both ways again. And first round pick, big contract with the Panthers. And he got another big contract, played 9 years with the Panthers. Still was the quietest guy you've ever seen. And we were trying to get a hold of him this past year for the 20-year reunion of the 2002 team, because he finally retired from the NFL. And he said, I'm not going to be able to make it, whatever. And so then I just talked with him just the other day, and he's considering going to work in the front office of the Carolina Panthers. I know he's in some discussions with them, but the best guy. I don't know if I've ever been around a more complete guy playing both ways. So I don't think he's gotten the notice that he deserves when you think of Ohio State legacy, but he never sought that. He just wanted to do. TJ, do you remember if you'd ask him a question, he had one phrase answer? It didn't matter what the question was. You remember?
That's too many hits ago.
I won't repeat that. But we'd be practicing, and he's playing both ways, playing 128 plays, all that. And you'd always say, Chris, are you all right? Are you tired? He'd always say, I'm straight. That's it. I'm straight. After coaching him for 3 years, I was thinking back, I'm not sure I had a conversation beyond I'm straight. But it beats some of the other conversations I had to have with people. So it wasn't a bad thing because he was straight. But anyway, Chris Campbell was a great one. Yes, sir.
Coach, since you're riding off into the sunset, will you still come back and talk to our group?
Is that an invitation?
Will you come back?
Oh, absolutely. If I'm invited, I got to. With one, bargaining chip. Mike's got to shorten the introduction. He took half my time. I feel safe with TJ here. That's all good. Way in the back.
You're still very young and very healthy. As you retire as president of the Youngstown state, are there any things you would want to do or would be interested in being as you perhaps not ride off in the sunset, but enjoy the sunset?
Well, my biggest goal is to speak at the Pro Football Hall of Fame luncheon. And so I may have gotten closer to accomplishing that. I'm a Northeastern Ohio guy, but I also like to be warm a little. So I'm going to spend 6 or 7 weeks a year, maybe where it's sunny. And Coach D'Antonio and Coach Bowman and I, you'll like this, TJ, we're going to have a 9-hole-a-week golf tournament. Now, you have to understand, I play 9 holes a year. Coach Bowman, Coach D'Antonio is very mad at Coach Bowman because he says he's been practicing. But Coach D'Antonio is not a scratch golfer. And so I'd like to spend, a little time in the warm weather, but really I'd like to stay focused on whatever impact we can have in Northeast Ohio, the state of Ohio, specifically toward education, workforce education, finding a way to repopulate our region, bring in more families so that we can, I don't know how it is here in Stark County, but in Mahoning and Trumbull County, the size of the schools has just shrunk, so we need to repopulate a little bit. But probably the biggest thing I'd like to do is have the time available to spend more family time, to spend more time with my former players, my former coaches. We've got the Great Lakes kind of surrounded. We have Mel Tucker at Michigan State. You got Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame. You got Luke Fickell at Wisconsin and PJ Fleck at Minnesota. I'd like to get out and see those guys a little bit and have a chance. Everyone during the course of the falls recently, hey, you going to the Ohio State game? Well, no, we have a game, and I've got 100 people in my president's suite and all this and that. And so I'm hoping to sort it out, and I'm sure all of you guys that have gone through going from one chapter to the next could have some good sound advice, but we'll figure it out. But we certainly want to keep trying to make a difference.
Last question.
Last question.
Last question.
Hey, could you remind Coach Day a couple times during the year, we need to beat Michigan?
I don't. I think he knows that, and I think he'll do that. He'll do that. I got a lot of confidence in Coach Day. So, with that, happy 2023. Thanks so much. God bless.